A while ago, it seems like a very long time ago, but only in early March, March the 9th, 2020, Heather Malik wrote a column for the Toronto Star entitled, "Can a Canadian Write a Novel Like Ducks Newburyport?" And it began, "I am reading the last few pages of Ducks Newburyport, a wild and stunning novel by British-American Lucy Ellmann that comprises 8 sentences that extend unparagraphed over more than 1,000 pages, a middle-aged woman's thoughts in the 21st century as she goes about her day." And then she quotes from the novel, "The fact that the raccoons are now banging the empty yogurt carton around in the driveway, the fact that in the early morning stillness it sounds like gunshots," end of quote, is how Ellmann begins her novel about an Ohio stay-at-home mother in the 21st century. She has 4 children and a professor husband who bakes pies for local cafes to earn extra money. She thinks about her children, delivers pies and lemon drizzle cake, gets caught in a flood and is rescued, remembers previous travels and husbands, the Little House on the Prairie novels, all her mistakes, her lifelong sorrow at her mother's early death, and her fascination with the tactile and the particular, all in a haze of anxiety endemic to the era. The novel is packed with lists, wonderful lists, built upon the phrase, "the fact that," and so will this column from this point on. The fact that Ducks Newburyport is a stream of consciousness novel that is much better than Jem Joyce's Ulysses, for Joyce and Virginia Woolf were credited with being the first to try such an allegedly formless thing and thus changing English literature forever, and not only that, making us conscious of our thoughts so that we think about our thinking, etc. Basically, Malik is making 2 essential points here. The first is that this is a long, ambitious novel about contemporary life, and it has no Canadian equivalent. And she's also arguing that the novel is better than Ulysses. Them's fighting words. In response, a short time later, on March the 10th, actually, Stephen Beattie wrote a column at his blog, That Shakespearean Rag, in response. Stephen wrote, "Heather Malik is the latest Canadian scribe to add her voice to one of the most iconic and long-standing genres of writing in this country, criticism bemoaning the lack of great Canadian novels. Writing in the Toronto Star, Malik suggests that the majority of novelists in this country paint on too small a canvas, crafting books that are, quote, largely unpopulated, often written in the first person, often about feelings rather than events," end of quote. These novels, Malik contends, quote, "are very good, but not ambitious or invented or original or venturesome," end of quote. Malik contrasts this with last year's behemoth stream of consciousness heavyweight Ducks Newburyport by Irish-American writer Lucy Ellmann. Where Canadian fiction looks inward, thinks small, and feels claustrophobic, Malik suggests Ellmann's sprawling novel about an unidentified Ohio housewife whose mind ranges widely over a field of anxieties and political problems while she bakes a series of tarts and pies in her suburban kitchen represents the kind of current, engaged writing about our cultural moment that is missing from Canadian fiction. That Malik presents the final 2/3 of her column in the style of Ellmann's novel as a single sentence studded with the repeated refrain, "the fact that," where a more traditional writer would put a period, is the first reason to be suspicious. Were I teaching an introductory course on criticism and had this handed to me, I would send it back with instructions to rewrite it and never make this rookie mistake again. And Stephen continues. First of all, he wants to make the point that there are many novels in the 21st century produced by Canadians that he likes, and he also wants to emphasize very strongly that there is a long, extended Canadian stream of consciousness work, which has been translated into English under the title "These Festive Nights." It's by the Quebecois writer. Stephen refers to her somewhat archaically as a French-Canadian writer. But in any case, Stephen emphasizes that this stream of consciousness novel was published by Canadian houses, Canadian Quebecois houses, didn't receive much attention. It was originally, I'll quote directly from Stephen's article. Quote, were she, that is Malik, of a mind to do so, I would recommend Malik pick up These Festive Nights, the English translation by Sheila Fishman of Mary Claire Blais' 1995 novel Swaths. The book, the first in a 10-book cycle, 8 of which have been translated into English and published by House of Anansi Press, is a modernist masterpiece, a single, unbroken paragraph running more than 250 pages that ranges across various characters and sensibilities to create a kind of expressionistic mosaic of modern life. The book won a Governor General's Literary Award in its original French. In the introduction to the English language edition, Lisa Moore writes, quote, These Festive Nights is wholly immersive, a torrent of sensation, mounting waves of beauty and its opposites, death and lust, alongside extreme poverty, systemic and arbitrary violence, end of quote. In other words, not at all the kind of recondite, auto-fictional stuff Malik dismisses, and there are 7 others currently available in English, all written in the same stream of consciousness style that, when put together, run to more than 1,000 pages. Voila, a Canadian ducks Newburyport, and one only has to look to Quebec to find it. Now, I think Stephen's point is very well taken. I do have a few queries about his argument, and the one that I'd mention right now is that, as you'll notice, the volume that he refers to, Swath, These Festive Nights, is 250 pages. 250 pages is not 1,000 pages. Now, that may sound like the most trivial kind of quibbling, but as practicing writers know, there is a big difference between writing a 250-page project and getting it out there into the world and having the tenacity and basically the risk-taking to push ahead to write a 1,000-page manuscript and then try to get that published, particularly within the very conservative atmosphere of Canadian publishing, which usually responds that these projects are simply not possible. So I would emphasize that there is a difference between publishing the 250-page first novel in a lengthy series and publishing a 1,000-page novel. In fact, of course, Blais' series runs to much more than 1,000 pages. A point that I'll have to deal with later. But what I would like to focus on is this whole question of Canadian and big novels. In fact, we do